Hello, everyone. Wait a couple of seconds here to let people sign in. All right, and Mac, you're controlling the slides.
I am.
Okay, well, welcome everyone to our presentation today on products, not projects. Honestly, I wish we were in San Diego right now, but we're not. So we'll do this virtually, and we'll cross our fingers for next year. My name is James Pease, and I'm an owner's representative. I've been working in the healthcare industry for about 20 years, and I'm currently the executive director for the University of California's health group. So lead a team that does a lot of renovation work for both inpatient hospitals and development of new medical office space. So that's my perspective today, and I'll introduce Michaela, our co-presenter.
Thank you. My name is Michaela. I'm with Mark III Construction. I've been part of the Mark III team for just about 6 years, and in the construction industry for 14 years now. Started out in the mechanical field and then have now moved to Mark III, where we tackle more than mechanical, which I'll get into here in the coming slides. So quick background on who Mark III is. We're turning 45 this year. We are an MEP specialty contractor. We're located in Sacramento, California, and we're focusing on how we can manufacture for construction. To do that, we've recently built a 24,000 square foot manufacturing facility. It's about 1.5 miles down the road from our main office. And within that facility, we house 5 different trades. We have mechanical piping, plumbing, HVAC, electrical, and most recently, metal stud framing. As a company, our mission is leading the evolution of construction, and that's not something that we take lightly. It's not something that's just posted on our walls or a slogan. We like to really put our money where our mouth is when it comes to that. How we do that, more specifically, is through some internal strategic R&D initiatives. We've had 2 so far to date. They started in roughly 2017. They're 100% self-funded. And it's really our avenue on how we can move the needle and innovate in construction. We choose to do this off-site at our facility because innovating in a construction space and on a job is just not the ideal situation. Projects come with their own challenges, and adding in an R&D into a project is just not the best approach in our opinion. So to date, we've had 2 rounds of it. Project Mountain 1 and Project Mountain 2. I'll tell you a little bit about Project Mountain 1 first. It was based on a Kaiser San Leandro Medical Center. This wasn't anything that actually was installed on a site. It was just, we took a hospital corridor section of 20 feet and built it 2 different ways in our facility. What we did was we took the section and we built it 2 different ways. One side of the wall that you'll see there in the top photo, we built in a stick build fashion. We took our best, our greatest foreman labor, and we approached it the way that a typical project would be approached on site: mechanical, electrical, plumbing, all being installed one piece and part at a time. And then on the Project Mountain side, on the other side of the wall, we did a completely racked system. That's the photo that you see there. And it was manufactured in just about a week, and then it took approximately 4 hours, 3 to 4 hours to install. That said, I'd love to sit here and say that we spent less hours on that racked side overall, but we did actually spend more hours through the virtual construction piece. What we did find also, though, is that on the stick-built side, using our best labor and our best talent, we know that that's as good as it's going to get. But on the rack system, that's just our baseline of knowing that we can manufacture it in about a week's time, being the baseline, and that with more racks and more repetition, we'd be able to reduce those hours down and just constantly see improvement from assembly to assembly.
All right, so So why should owners care about this? I'm just looking to set a baseline about why we should be interested in this type of prefabrication on projects. And so from an owner's point of view, and I'm sure most of the other healthcare owners and other owners are out there, we have more projects that we want to build than we actually have capital to build them. So we're just going through that right now internally. We have 100 projects. We think we can fund 70 of them. So 30 projects that have a strong business case that we want to do, we can't afford to do because our projects cost too much money. They also take a really long time. So our typical project takes anywhere from 2 to 4 years to go through. Let's go back to the other slide real quick. Thank you. So that money is funded in a year, but the cash flow spreads out over 4 years. And so we just have a lot of money tied up that we can't actually deploy to open things to treat patients. Over on the right-hand side, this is a study of large capital projects. The data is a little bit old now, but I challenge anyone to say that anything has actually changed significantly. And what it says is that only 28% roughly of projects out of almost 1,000 project sample size with an average size of 65 million, only 28% of those projects actually finish under budget and ahead of schedule. So that means roughly 70% of projects either finish over budget, they finish late, or both. And then what I want to call your attention to as well is the 5.4%, that little square in the middle. So that represents projects that finish within 3% plus or minus of their schedule and within 2.7% plus or minus of their budget. So only 5% of projects are actually reliable in the sense of when the owner starts a project and they say, this is how much I think it'll cost and this is how long I think it'll take. Only 5% of projects finish within that kind of a window. And so that makes it really difficult for us to plan ahead and think about, okay, which services can we bring on and what time will they be available? And so let's go to the next slide. So I've been on a mission, as most people listening today are on a mission, to find out how can we bring in our projects faster and how can we do them more cost effectively. Doesn't mean we just want to make them cheap, but we want the money that we spend to go into value in the finished project. And so this is a typical outpatient medical clinic schedule. So we would have a programming phase where we think about how big, how many exam rooms, how many square feet it needs to be. There'd usually be finding real estate in that section. And then we'd typically spend 6 months in design between schematic design, design development, construction documents. A local city jurisdiction, we might be in for permits for 3 months, and then about a 6-month build out. And we're talking like a 10 or 15,000 square foot clinic, and then a month to move all the equipment in, do staff training. So you're looking about 20 months for us to open a medical clinic. And so what we want to focus on is, okay, what sections of this are value added work that, and what of this is work that's done that can be repeated. So to Michaela's earlier comment, like when they built the overhead rack, that was, once that design is done, it can be used. Pieces of that can be used. So in the next slide, what would a target schedule look like if you actually compress? So if you start to create standards and you automate some of the design and you drive that into a prefabrication schedule, you would still have a programming period, but you can compress the design because essentially schematic design, design development, and construction documents can overlap if you have a lot of standards and you're using a model for typical components. Permitting would be the same, but you could actually start offsite fabrication because the building inspector is not going to know if you're building things ahead of time and they're not going to care. So you can build earlier and then you can shorten your time on site significantly. And then the same fit up period. So you can deliver the exact same product in a 14-month duration. And so you're going to save on architecture time, you're going to save on general conditions, and you're going to save on overall escalation. And you're going to get the exact same product and potentially even better. So this is kind of what drove me. I've been participating in integrated project delivery for a decade, and coordinating different trades, we have not been able to achieve this. So, and I think it's because every project is a new team. We start design from scratch. We start coordination from scratch. And so I got introduced to Mark III and their Project Mountain 1, and we decided to collaborate on something that we're going to build a lot of in California, which is outpatient exam rooms. And so I'll turn it over to Michaela to talk about the work in Project Mountain 2.
All right. So Project Mountain 2, this is where, James and I kind of came together. It was focused on those exam spaces. They make up a lion's share of a typical MOB. So what we did is we started to meet with James and we looked at how can we standardize everything that's in this, roughly 120 square foot space. We honed in on the room. We decided to build it a couple different times, actually 4 different times in 3 different phases. And we wanted to really focus on how could we standardize and put together kit of parts to be assembled on site by 2 non-trade specific mechanics. We partnered with Sutter, like I mentioned, when James was with Sutter, and also with Bolt, and we had weekly meetings talking about what goes into these rooms. We took that two-person team and delivered them daily kits of every material that they needed cut to length. The tools that they needed came with their kits every day, and then an IKEA-like instruction. Just think of the same type of instructions you get when you're putting together a shelf or something, but we're putting together a room. Through doing it in the different phases, we came up with different ways to increase manufacturing or decrease manufacturing if it wasn't working. And we tracked every single issue that we had so that when we went to go build the room over again, we were eliminating repeat mistakes. On the first room that we did, everything was rock material. And then when we built the final phase, we increased the manufacturing element by delivering the wall panels as an assembly with all the plumbing and all of the electrical in the panel itself. By doing this, we found a huge schedule savings. So also we found, because we were doing every part and piece and every bit of work with those 2 people, we found where we should continue to do things, where we could tweak things, and where we shouldn't do it. Like, we learned right away, we're not painters. We don't want to be painters. It wasn't something that was efficient. It didn't add any value, and not something that we wanted to explore in a actual field setting because it wasn't efficient at all. So on the first phase, it took the one single room from metal stud framing all the way through the paint to the 2 gentlemen that did it. It took them 10 days to do that. On the final build that we did, the final phase, we attacked the same room, but by implementing those countermeasures for our mistakes and by increasing to the wall panels, we were able to complete the room in 6.5 days. We also saw a decrease in our repeat mistakes, just an overall decrease in the issue log entries that we had. And we found that the greatest value that we could give to an owner were the wall panel assemblies. And that's actually leads me to our next slide. So to date, everything that I've talked about was self-funded and was performed here in our warehouse in Sacramento. From that, we then went and did a project with Bolt as a partner at the UC Davis campus in Davis. And it was a 4,500 or so square foot medical office building. We invited Bolt into our manufacturing facility, which you see in that top picture. And we did the design documents, but they went ahead and fabricated the actual wall panels themselves. And then we received them a couple feet away and installed all of the electrical and all the plumbing. We packaged them up, delivered them to the site where Bolt then received them, came in and they stood them all in place. I argued at the beginning of the project that I thought we could do the exterior in a day and the interior in a day. And it was met with some pushback. So we did it over a 2-day duration. But on the first day, we found that we were out of work by 10 a.m. on the first day and had to wait a couple hours to get a truck on the road with those panels to finish out the exterior of the building. Let's see, keep going on here. The next project that we did was with Deacon, and it was a Sutter Health MOB in Natomas, which is on the north end of Sacramento. We completed the electrical, the HVAC, plumbing, and then the in-wall panels as well on this one. It's still under construction. We'll be finishing up with commissioning in the next week or so. For this job, we really boosted the collaboration on how we approached it, and we used tact planning so that we're grouping like work together to maximize the flow of work through the building. In the first step in doing that was defining where the like areas were. So on this first photo over here, you'll see the highlighted areas. These were all the office areas on the north side, and then the east and west side were almost mirror images of each other with all the exam spaces, and the center housed kind of the restrooms and some clean med storage. We then broke it down even further and figured out how we could optimize our crew sizes so that we were sequencing everybody to kind of move in rhythm. So how much pipe can somebody install with a 2-man crew on this first day? And then do we need to slow them down or speed them up so that the electrician's coming in and staying in rhythm and whatnot? That's kind of what you'll see here in this. It's sometimes referred to as creating a march of trades. And what we do is each one of those boxes here, they represent a different trade, and we sequence who needs to come first, who's our predecessor, who's our successor, and then move through the areas in a really systematic fashion to just create the most efficiency. What we found on this job was we modeled the in-wall and the wall framing after a project that was done up the road in Roseville, California, that had a 30-day duration for the in-wall and wall framing. We were able to set all of the walls, and you see some of the wall panels here with the backing and the electrical and whatnot. We were able to install all the panels in 8 days. So we had 30 days on the schedule, and we were done standing all the walls in 8 days, and then had to come through and make our final connections. Right now, we're projecting over a 10% cost savings on the budget, which is also very exciting. Time is obviously money, but money is money as well. So any savings to either just adds up on the back end. Let's see. So why is standardizing so important? We just talked about what we did on this project, how we were able to show savings to the schedule, show savings to the budget. But by taking those from site to site, we can see those savings compounded. With the repetition becomes more efficiency. And we're currently just looking at the exam room, but by standardizing the exam space, the office space, and the restrooms within the facility, it makes up about 73 to 75% of the usable space once you take out the waiting rooms and the corridor. So if we can standardize those just 3 rooms and move those from location to location, we believe that we'll see compounded savings from site to site. James, you want to talk about what that means for the owners?
Unmute there. Great. Thank you. I've been really, really excited with the early results here. So as Michaela said, the first project we partnered on was one where we were actually building the project with another team, and we were mirroring the construction in Mark III's office. So while a different team was building it in the field, and we were keeping track of how long it was taking, and we know what we spent for that job when it was ultimately done, and we were comparing that to work that was done in the field as Mark III and Michaela were experimenting with this idea of providing all of the pieces like an IKEA box, but not having them assembled. And then the next Sutter project was actually where the wall panels were completely done. It was an actual project, so it was a real life test for how the project would go. And so the actual wall installation for the project was 73% faster than we would carry in a regular project schedule. And want to talk a little bit what that means from the owner point of view. So one, as I said, we have more projects than we have capital. So if we can reduce the cost that it takes to deliver each individual building, then we're not going to keep that money. We're actually going to go forward and we're going to fund additional projects. So a message to a lot of the a lot of the partners out there is this standardization and prefabrication in healthcare is not going to take work away. It's just going to change the nature of the work. And so most health systems have a certain amount of their retained earnings that they can spend towards capital, or they put a percentage of their gross revenue towards capital. And we want to build as many projects with that money as possible. It's not that we have one project and we want to do it cheaply as possible. We want to spend all the money, and we want to continue to grow, and we want to increase access. So I think that's why owners should care about this. This provides a way to deliver the same quality, if not better, projects, but for less money and quicker. And so back to that earlier slide about projects in general just being unreliable about when they're going to finish, it makes our cash flow unreliable. When we open a new clinic, we have to hire staff for that. So it's hard for us to project when we need to hire people, when we need to buy equipment, when we don't know when a project's going to be finished. So in the long run, we can standardize these clinics, and many of you know how politically challenging it can be to standardize within the medical field with the providers. And we can still provide leeway. So you can provide, say, 2 or 3 exam room options where you can have the sink on one wall or the other. You can put the exam table in 2 or 3 different options. So we can allow our providers to participate and still get the gains of the standardization. Because at the end of the day, with accessibility and all of the code requirements, there's not an infinite number of ways to design exam room. There's only a couple, maybe more than a couple, but there's not an infinite amount. But in my experience, we seem to approach every single clinic project as if we've never done it before and we start from scratch. And so this way we can come to the user groups and say, okay, here's a couple of different options. Which one do you prefer? And then with the work Mark III is doing behind the scenes, our long-term goal is essentially to be able to basically automate the construction document process so that you put these modules together within a 3D model. And I oversimplify. I say you hit print and your construction documents print out. All your detailing's there. You can go down to the building department and pull your permit, and then you'll have the spool sheets and you can go straight to fabrication. There's one question I'll hit. We purposely decided to do this on non-OSHPD projects to start. So I think this has tremendous value for inpatient, for new hospitals, as well as renovation work. But we wanted to get the flow and the concepts established without the additional oversight of OSHPD and the inspector of record, and figuring out if something has to be inspected at the shop, and having people be concerned that they didn't see something be put together versus, if we're delivering wall panels to the site, how do they know that we actually use the correct products? And so that's where we've started, and I think we can go towards OSHPD work in the future.
Yeah, and I can add to that. We did, for the UC Davis clinic job, we did invite the IOR to our shop to take a peek at what we were doing, just so that it wasn't a surprise seeing the material show up to the site in a different way. That said, we used all of the same, the walls aren't coming out one-sided. Everything is visible. We're not changing the materials themselves, or we're still following the typical details, or have a couple of our own established that are getting reviewed or approved. So we have had IORs to our shop. We welcome that, just so that there's no surprises. There's another question that says, do you have to get approval in advance from a local city inspector in order to pre-assemble these devices? Kind of along the same things. No, because we're not completely changing the actual end product. It's just coming to site pre-assembled, like you said in the question, not just in each part and piece by itself. Then there's another question here. It says, are you able to get the prime contractor for each subsequent project to commit to using the same three room types of kitted parts? So we, current state, do not have another project lined up with any with the owners that we spoke about here to then implement these files on the next one. That said, we're allowing for some variance. Think of it as a recipe. Maybe one takes a little bit another egg, or one takes a little bit more water. There is some room for variance, but we have the general recipe for these rooms to be then installed at different locations. I hope that answers both of those.
Yeah, I'll add to that. So I think if you really want to reap the benefits of this kind of standardization and prefabrication, the owner needs to really be clear that this is one of their goals from the beginning. And I say that having failed a bunch of times. So starting a project and going through design in a traditional process, and then when design is done, trying to figure out how to prefabricate it and kit it and get the benefits, in my experience, it hasn't really worked. Where it works the best is if you go in saying, okay, I want to create a design out of kits of parts that I've already created, and I want to kind of assemble them. So think of Legos, where the pieces are already defined and you can make all kinds of things if you use the standard Lego pieces. If you come up with something first and then you decide to try to figure out what pieces you're going to build it with later, I have not been able to get benefits that way. I also think if you keep hiring a different design team, they have their own details, they have their own way of doing things. General contractors have trades that they like to work with, ways that they like to pursue the work. So, just being transparent, what I've found is, as an owner, I've created a relationship with a trade partner who's actually investing in research and development, and they also perform multiple trades. So I'm not trying to get the mechanical company, the plumbing company, and the electrical company to work together to share scope and come up with prefabricated assemblies. Because a lot of the projects that I have, the individual trades are not willing to give up work, or they just say prefabricated assemblies don't work, and they don't really even try. And so this is how we've got to an approach that actually works, my opinion. So I think we've gone through most of the questions. If you have other questions, please go ahead and shoot them our way. We're excited about this. I'm looking forward to getting some new projects going. And for the first time, I feel like we're really getting something that I would call a material improvement in schedule. Don't be shy. Okay, it looks like we don't have additional questions at this time. So, Michaela, anything else you'd like to say before we end?
No, I don't have anything else to add other than if you have any follow-up questions, find me on LinkedIn. I'd love to have conversations with any and all of you. And I think that's all.
Sounds good. Yeah. So you can reach out to Michaela. You can also reach out to me. My current email address is the easiest one I've ever had, james.pease@ucsf.edu. And happy to share thoughts on this. And, one of the things I think, I'd encourage you to reach out to Michaela as well, whatever type of organization you are, because one of the things that I was really impressed about, and I think why the improvements are actually happening, is they've been very transparent about all the things that didn't work. So, but they define them as opportunities. So the first exam room that got built in their office was with a kit of parts, a bunch of pieces that were pre-cut, but they were not assembled. And they had put together plans that had like a QR code that you could open for the steps. But how many breakdowns or opportunities did you find when you did that?
Yeah, so on the first one, we came up with 126. We had them labeled as issues, which was not probably the best term for it because a lot of them are opportunities. I think I went into the my president afterwards and said, we screwed up 126 times on this 120 square foot room. And he said, well, that means you have 126 opportunities to get better on the next time you build it. So from that, we took those and we evaluated them into different buckets. Was it a virtual problem? Was it a manufacturing problem? Was it a material issue? Did we not have the right tool? And we backfed that into the next room. And through the process, we then went down to the next one, had somewhere in the neighborhood of 70-ish issues / opportunities. And we've actually used that same log on the projects that we've built. And we have them posted in our manufacturing facility on the wall. We have it posted on the site on the wall, so that anytime somebody sees something, we're writing that down and backfeeding it to the department that it applies to, so that they can continuously get better. It's something that we focus on a lot. Me specifically, I love having this log to just show just opportunities. It started out off on the wrong foot of people thinking that it was kind of a pointing the finger back and forth, but we quickly squashed that and said, don't think of it that way. Think of it as, ways for the team to get better. And I think that really helped. It helped to get people to actually bring the issues to light. I think at the beginning, people were scared of saying that they screwed up, but it did progressively get better, and we encouraged it through giving out gift cards for the people that came up with the most issues in a week. So it's just kind of a cultural thing of how we operate, is just always looking for that opportunity to improve on what we're delivering to our customers.
Michaela, can you go a little deeper into how you did that? I thought that was really interesting, how you got people to actually share what the issues were, and how you had shared some stories before about people were just hesitant to share those things, and how you finally got through that.
100%. They were hesitant to call themselves out. They were hesitant. And then when they did get called out, sometimes it did turn into a finger pointing activity. Well, yeah, I might've done that, but this person did this. And so I had labeled it as an issue log at the very beginning, and I changed the name to issues and opportunities. And I told everybody, don't just look at this as problems, but something might have gone well, but could it have gone better? So we did have some, and within the log, we track what the potential lost time was. It's it's an approximation, but did we lose a day? Did we have a screeching halt to where we had to just stop what everybody was doing to figure it out? Were we able to solve it right away? Like, it was a problem, but I knew how to fix it right away, but it's still something that we should track, because on every construction project that I've ever been a part of, you see repeat mistakes from site to site, and it just doesn't make sense. Like, let's evaluate what went wrong and make a change so that you don't see that mistake from site to site. So just by changing the name from issue log to issues and opportunities, there was a shift in how it was approached, and became less of a he did this, she did that. And it was more, we could do this. This wasn't great. Here's how we can get better.
Yeah, I want to point out that, and that's mostly within your own company, right?
100% in our own company so far. It is something that we do want to, on future endeavors, encourage the GC to participate in, to encourage the design team, to the owner. Everybody can be giving us feedback, or just feedback to, maybe it's not just us, it's somebody else on the team. And just so you're filtering the information back and forth, and kind of a positive spin on it of how we as a group can get better, because it's not just a Mark III there to perform a project. It's not just, we really approach it as one whole team. And that's something that I would say over the last 6 years of being here is a new way of looking at construction, that just, I don't have to lose just so that somebody else can win. We know that collectively, if everybody can be winners and make the whole project a success.
Yeah, I think it's important to point out how difficult it is to get real improvement or conversation about issues and improvement opportunities just within one team. And so just my experience in integrated project delivery, where I just assume that when you put people in a shared risk reward structure as if they're in one company, you run into the same thing. People are hesitant to share. They're hesitant to really expose what their mistakes are. And it's incredibly difficult to actually improve. And I'd also like to point out that, you had 126 issues on the first pass, and that number went down by 50 or 60 on the second pass. And so I think too much as owners, we focus on getting our cost savings by bidding and trying to drive the margins down as a way to save money. And what we're losing from project to project is we have 126 issues and they get repeated because there's no built-in learning from project to project. Not that there's none, but I would challenge that there's virtually none from project to project when we change the team members all the time. There's one question here about what is UCSF's primary delivery model. And so I'll be brutally honest, most of our current delivery model is design, bid, build. One of the reasons I was excited to come to UCSF is I think it's a very progressive, it's a public entity, so we follow the public contracting code. And there are many ways to deliver collaborative projects within the public contracting code. And we just really are starting to use them. So we're looking at progressive design build. We're looking at best value selection. We're looking at using design build trade partners. Definitely doing a much more heavily design assist type of model, but I believe design assist really doesn't go far enough. Is what I like about integrated project delivery. The entire team owns accountability for the design being well coordinated and working. And so that's one of our big challenges. Not because the public contracting code doesn't allow collaboration, but it has very specific models that you have to use. And if it's not within that model, then it's looked at. If it's not one of the prescribed models, it's looked that you can't do it. I would also say that University of California, San Francisco has its first full integrated project delivery project with a poly-party IFOA, and it's still in the very early stages. But if that project gets going successfully, I think that we can use that as a case study to bring more collaborative models to the public contracting code. That's my long-term goal. It's probably a 10 or 20-year goal. If you want to get involved in work at UCSF, we make all of our projects, or almost all of our projects are public, all the big ones for sure, at designandconstruction.ucsf.edu. We use a system called Building Connected, so our procurements are public. And if you're not working with us, we would encourage you to participate. And definitely, if you're a disadvantaged business enterprise and you're looking to do work with UCSF, we would like to hear from you as well.
It looks like there's another question, maybe.
Yeah, so specifically for specialty services, so we do, in public contracting code, we do qualifications-based selection for professional services firms. So architects, engineers are selected based on qualifications, and then the fees are negotiated after selection. The public contracting code really wants construction to have a component of selection based on lowest price, which is why best value comes into play. And so to the question of when you do low bid, do you get lower quality? I don't know that you get necessarily lower quality, but you definitely lose out on having the people who know how to build integrating their knowledge into the design. So if you run a design phase completely separate from construction, you lose out on a tremendous potential to get things right the first time. And so I would say at UCSF, almost all of our design bid build projects finish significantly late, and a lot of them finish well over the original budgets. And also when we take them out to bid, and a lot of times is the first time we get real contractor input on pricing, and we're usually wrong. We use third-party estimators, And I had one the other day tell me, well, I would just recommend you not bid anything for the next year if you want reliable pricing. That's not really a good answer for us to tell the doctors, well, we're just not going to bid anything for a year until the market figures out where it's at. So I think you lose reliability, let's say, and if you're not careful, you can lose quality as well when you only hire based on the low price.
There is one thing I was thinking about. I heard you mention case study a second ago, and I wanted to say that we have case studies. I know that I mentioned that earlier on our Project Mountain 1 and our Project Mountain 2 so far. You can find links to those on our website, and we will have another one coming out here by the end of March that will be based on what we did with the wall panel install at the Sutter MOB in Natomas. So that'll be out here in the next month or so, month and a couple days, which will also be on our website.
Yeah, so I would add there's a series of blogs that talk about some of the outcomes of these projects at leanipd.com/blog. And Michaela, if someone wanted to get a hold of you via email, what would be the best way to do that?
It would be moei@mark-3, spelled out THREE.com. And it looks like those are provided in the chat for everybody as well, which is awesome.
Okay, well, to wrap it up, I think this is a really good idea. I think Michaela does as well. I think there's a lot of benefits to trade partners in increasing profitability, reliability. We have a skilled worker shortage coming. People are not entering the trades as fast as they're retiring out of the trades. So I think this is a very real and almost a necessary, bound to happen solution to that issue. It's just a matter of whether you're going to be on the front end of its adoption or on the back end of its adoption. Great. Thank you very much. I think we're done.
I think